Good morning, Europe. It's Wednesday, the 26th of January. Let's start by looking at our top stories.
America says it could consider personal sanctions against Putin if Russia invades, as France and Germany unite in their support for Ukraine, calling for a de-escalation. Meanwhile, Paris hosts four-way talks with Berlin, Moscow and Kiev in the hope of diffusing tensions. And a flying car in Slovakia has been given an airworthiness certificate by the Slovak Transport Authority in line with European Aviation Safety Agency.
When people see the US delivering military aid to Ukraine, a country with 100,000 Russian soldiers poised on its border, it's understandable they worry. Tensions are undoubtedly high. On Tuesday evening, France and Germany were united in calling for the heat in the crisis to be turned down, but they remained resolutely behind Ukraine. We're preparing in parallel a common reaction and response. In case of aggression, if there is aggression, there'll be retaliation, and the cost will be very high. Chancellor Scholz was also asked if he felt Germany had betrayed countries such as Poland and Ukraine by not taking a quicker and tougher stance against Moscow. In recent years, the German government has repeatedly decided not to supply lethal weapons. There are reasons for that, which are fed by the developments of recent years and decades. Nevertheless, we've done a great deal to actively support economic development and the development of democracy in Ukraine, not just through finance, but also within the framework of international responsibilities that we have. But if Europe would like to see tensions lowered, it won't have helped that Russia started joint naval drills with China today in the Western Arabian Sea. The US-Russia negotiations are completed at this stage. Before we understand when and in what format they should continue, we'll need to receive the written reply from the US. We hope it'll happen this week, and what we're seeing at the moment from the US side, informationally and de facto, is the escalation of tension. We talked a lot about it yesterday. Nothing changes here. We're watching these US actions with great concern. Ukrainians have been saying in recent days they're hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. The diplomacy is at least still in play. President Macron said he'd talk to Russia's President Vladimir Putin by phone on Friday. Mark Armstrong, Euronews.
In the unlikely setting of a Washington gift shop, US President Joe Biden has issued his latest warnings to Russia over Ukraine, including the threat of personal sanctions against Vladimir Putin himself in the event of an invasion.
There will be enormous consequences worldwide. This would be the largest, if he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
Biden's firm rhetoric has surprised those who would prefer a more conciliatory approach. But for the opposition Republicans, the complaint is that, if anything, he's not doing enough to react to the threat from Moscow.
Deploying additional NATO troops, including some of our own, into Poland, Romania, the Baltics, now, not after an incursion.
Opinion polls suggest that only about a quarter of Americans have confidence in Biden to effectively manage the military or promote US standing in the world.
Today's Normandy format talks between senior advisors from Ukraine, Russia, Germany and France in Paris surely give hope for a peaceful solution to the Ukraine crisis. The goal of this format is to end the conflict in the east of Ukraine, but the talks have been stalled because of the differences on how to press ahead. After a visit of senior German and French diplomats to Russia at the beginning of this month, the Normandy format seems to have been revived. The agenda was not made public, but the Minsk agreements will no doubt be one of the topics of discussion. Russia has been accusing Ukraine of sabotaging those agreements, underlining that one of the crucial points is the special status of the separatist regions. The head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Andrei Yermak, who will take part in today's talks, said that his country will implement the Minsk agreements exclusively in the interests of Ukraine and in accordance with the norms of international law. He also said that Ukraine wants to talk about the installment of a clear and unified ceasefire control mechanism that would include Germany and France. Galina Polonskaya for Euronews.
As the four-way talks begin later between Paris, Berlin, Ukraine and Russia, Fabrice Potier is a senior defence fellow at the International Institute of Strategic Studies, and he told us that a united front between Germany and France is a strength that could avert an invasion.
What is clear is that unity is our best weapon, and this is why the EU-US sanctions that have been implemented and held since 2014 have been actually pretty successful in showing to the Russians that we are walking in one step. However, I think what would be extremely powerful is not that President Macron goes to Berlin, but that he goes from Berlin to Moscow with Chancellor Scholz. I think that will send a very strong message that both France and Germany, and by extent, the whole of NATO is united in speaking with one voice to the Russians. I think this is what we are expecting now, a bit more dramatic diplomacy to really change the terms of the situation, which for the moment are very much in favor of President Putin.
Police in London confirmed on Tuesday that they'll investigate alleged parties at Downing Street during lockdown, some of which the UK Prime Minister attended. The announcement puts further pressure on Boris Johnson's Conservative government. The city's Metropolitan Police Commissioner revealed that an investigation was underway in a statement before the London Assembly.
I can confirm that the Met is now investigating a number of events that took place at Downing Street and Whitehall in the last 2 years in relation to potential breaches of COVID-19 regulations. I should stress that the fact that we are now investigating does not, of course, mean that fixed penalty notices will necessarily be issued in every instance and to every person involved.
The Partygate allegations have infuriated many in Britain who were barred from meeting with friends and family for months in 2020 and 21 to curb the spread of COVID-19.
So I welcome the Met's decision to conduct its own investigation, because I believe this will help to give the public the clarity it needs and help to draw a line under matters. We agreed on the necessity of
The various party claims are being investigated by a senior civil servant whose report could come this week. The police haven't said exactly which alleged events they'll be looking at.
The leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer.
Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is set to get a second 5-year term in office as Director General of the World Health Organization after no candidates were put forward to challenge him at a meeting of the agency's executive board. The deciding vote at the WHO's assembly in May is now expected to be a formality. Denmark footballer Christian Eriksen has returned to training with Ajax's reserve team 7 months after suffering a cardiac arrest at the European Championships. Eriksen's heart stopped during Denmark's match against Finland. Medics saved his life by resuscitating him with a defibrillator.